All right, so I heard that you guys like demos, so I'm going to just show you a bunch of slides for the next 2 hours. Cool?
Cool.
All right, so we're going to stop, drop, and roll. No, I'm kidding. We're going to demo. There we go. If you do not know who I am, my name is Rebecca Fitzhugh, and here's all the ways that you can harass me on the internet. Fair? I do ask only one thing. Please use GIFs. Okay? And I will respond. So what are we going to be demoing today? We actually have several demos. I'm going to start by deploying a cloud cluster. I know you guys really wanted to watch step by step me deploying an AMI, and your wish is granted. Okay? And then from there, we're going to get to the really interesting stuff. Okay? Where we're going to archive. I know that's super fun, right? Cloud out. And then we're going to get into Cloud On, which is our instantiation. And we're going to see some really neat stuff. Wait, I oversold that. We're going to see some okay stuff when we get to our SQL Server database live mount. Okay? So, phase one. Too far. I don't know how to use a clicker. Guys, I promise I'm a technologist. Instilling confidence so far. All right, so phase one, we're getting into Cloud Cluster. So, slides, promised, right? Just 2 hours of slides. You may have already seen the slide, right? Chris showed you the slide earlier. So my whole point that I wanted to make on this slide is that we're effectively using the exact same code base here, whether we're running in Azure or AWS or on premises. Okay? So with our cloud cluster, a couple of things to note. We have a 4-node minimum. Okay, no problem. We're doing erasure coding. Should make some sense there. I already mentioned we're using the same code base, and we're able to protect our Windows, our Linux, and our SQL Server databases, okay, that are running in the cloud. So I'm going to be demoing today on AWS, but I want you to know that what I'm doing in AWS is applicable to Azure as well. Okay? So what are our use cases? Backup and recovery of our cloud data. All right, so we're going to be protecting our workloads, our instances that are running in Azure and AWS. Secondly, archival. Right, we're already able to do this on premises to the cloud, but if you're running Rubrik in the cloud, you can still archive within AWS, right, or even archive elsewhere. DR, isn't this, I don't know, Chris made a reference earlier. He goes, everybody has a backup, right? Well, same thing with DR plans. My experience as a consultant, I go, what's your DR plan? And they go, yeah, about that. We need to talk, right? So we're able to assist in your DR planning. We're able to replicate from our cloud instance to on-premises and vice versa, okay? And what's even cooler, if you will, is being able to replicate from cloud to cloud. So we can have our AWS workloads replicated over to Azure. Okay? So how do we deploy? I figured that you probably would not want to watch me contact support and get the AMI shared and provide them my customer information. So I went ahead and preloaded all of that for us. Well, that's what the first thing that we need to do is talk to Rubrik, share our AWS account information, share our details, and then Rubrik's going to share the AMI with you. Okay? And then from there, we're going to spin it up, minimum 4 instances, scale as needed, and we're going to then bootstrap it. And that's what you're going to see me do. Really exciting stuff. I promise it gets better. All right? And then magically, your cluster's up and running at the end, and you're able to start protecting your workloads. Numbers, kind of important when it comes to planning. So here are the sizing information that you need. So what's of note here is that this is pretty comparable to what it is on premises. Okay? So again, minimum 4 nodes. So we do have some options when it comes to AWS, whether you can do 3 or 6 terabytes, and that's where the 12 to 24 comes from for our raw data capacity. Okay? Are you ready for demo? Mm-hmm. No more slides? You know there's going to be more slides. Come on. All right. Now here's where we get to see if I know how to use a computer. Whoa, okay, I do. Oh, there we go. All right. So, AWS spun up. Okay. I'm already logged in. Go to instances. One of the things I want to show you really quickly, because I'm going to come back to this later, is that we already have an instance of Cloud Cluster running. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a new instance. So what do? Okay, go to My AMIs,
How do you launch the cloud cluster through AWS?
And what could you
Is it in the marketplace? Can I just?
Yeah, so you have to contact Rubrik, and we will share it with you. So if I go to my AMIs, it's going to be privately shared with me.
Are there plans to add it to the AWS marketplace?
I honestly don't know, to be fair with you. So if I go ahead and I select, in this case, we'll do 4.0. We saw earlier that is going to be M4 XL. Go ahead and select that. Figure instance details. Minimum 4, right? So we can scale as needed. If 4 nodes doesn't provide you enough capacity, you can just add more nodes as necessary, right? It's a scale-out approach. For VPC, I'm just going to leave this all as default for the purposes of this demo. However, in this case, you would go ahead and choose what the appropriate VPC is for your organization, as long as it's configured to allow the traffic through. Same thing with subnet and your public and private IPs. And choose what's appropriate for your organization and how you've configured your regions. Okay. Placement group, could you use it? Sure, right? But we're not going to necessarily get any major benefit by placing them together. Okay. Same with IAM role. So the next thing, we just simply go ahead and hit add storage. This is what you're going to, this is pretty comparable to what you would see on a physical brick. Okay, so we see that we have a couple of volumes here. Okay, so each is a terabyte, and then we have our flash ingest at the top. Add tags. Go ahead and hit add tag, name. What do we want to call it?
Do you mind zooming in just a little bit? There you go.
Is that a little bit better? Don't worry, I was like this too, so you're helping me as well. All right, so CFD2, we'll call it demo, no problem. And then come down to configure. So I've already created a security group, okay, called Cloud Cluster, but again, you would just need to make sure that it does allow in and out the appropriate ports that are documented. Okay. And then simply review and launch. Okay, everything looks good. I've got 4 instances, going to get spun up. Looks good to me, so I'm going to hit launch. Now here, we don't need to choose a key pair, okay, because you're going to have password. All right, Rubrik will tell you what that is. So I can go ahead and acknowledge, and everything will be good to go there. Now, here's where we get to sit and wait. Very exciting, right? No questions. We're just going to sit here in silence.
So, Rebecca, I just maybe missed something in the beginning. Yeah. Do you need to go and provision this yourself each time, or can Rubrik just call out via an API and say, I want my Rubrik-y, cloudy stuff done? It seems a bit of a clicky through the...
Yeah, you're going to provision it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about like a use case that we actually saw with a customer while we're sitting here waiting for it to initialize. So we have a mortgage company, and they had 2 business units, right? And one had their data stored in Azure, and the other business unit had their data stored in AWS. And so what they wanted to do is basically cross-protect, right? And that's where Rubrik came into play, where they spun up an instance of Cloud Cluster in AWS and an instance in Azure, and they're able to replicate the data between. Okay. Magic. All right, now it's running. I've wasted enough time. Right. So let me do the really fun thing of documenting the IPs. I didn't think you guys would want to watch me switching back and forth, unless you do. You guys are all very kind, because if I knew somebody was writing down a bunch of numbers, I would just start saying numbers to confuse them. So wow, that's really kind of you.
I hadn't thought of it until now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that I gave you malicious ideas, it's all over for me, right? So while we're sitting here for a second waiting for this to initialize, anybody have any questions so far? I know mine's kind of the straightforward one.
Do you just have a ballpark figure of what that would cost to run for a month? The 4 nodes with the 1 terabyte with the drive, just as a base.
I did it. So I deployed this a little while ago, and I looked at the cost figures. It's about $8,000 or $9,000 a month, I think, to run it, because you're talking about 4 M4 large or extra large servers. with 6 terabyte plus the SSD.
Okay.
So it's
And that's the
was
minimum.
that that's 6 terabytes of storage. Obviously deduplication.
for each node.
For each node. Okay, yeah. So 24 terabytes, obviously deduplicated. So yeah, that's won't fit on my credit card, but
Anything else? We watch the grass grow. Just wait. We're going to watch the bootstrap happen. It's just going to be silence.
Riveting.
15 minutes.
Time for
Absolutely riveting.
a Stephen
I know.
Cloud joke.
There's a question from Twitter asking about data transfer costs for the cross-cloud use case. Wanted to know if Rubrik helps with that, maybe through dedupe or something, because it seems cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean, everything is deduped, free replication, so it does help reduce that.
Okay.
I can't give you an exact figure on that.
Yeah.
I suppose it'll depend on the
Amount
app
of
or
data.
what you're backing up to
Yeah.
dedupe.
And how sparse your data is.
Yeah.
That is one thing that you would lose if you were doing, well, it's a question, I suppose. If you go cloud only, so you don't have an on-site location for backing up, where does the dedupe happen? Is that client side or is it before the push to cloud? Because my understanding was that it would be deduped on the appliance and then the push to cloud onto S3 buckets would be a deduped push.
Right,
But
so-
if I don't have that on-site box anymore and I go straight to cloud, does it dedupe on the client side somehow before it goes to cloud? How does that work?
So are you insinuating then that we'd be running Cloud Cluster and archiving within the cloud as well?
Well, I'm just trying to understand. So across the network, so if it's on my site, I have a Rubrik box sitting in my data center. I can back up to it and it dedupes in that Rubrik cluster before it then pushes out to an S3 bucket. Yeah. But if I do cloud only with this cloud cluster, I don't have that deduping function happening in my data center on your gear anymore. Where does the dedupe happen?
I mean, it's going to be happening at that point still within the, in this case, it'll be the cloud cluster, right? And then, because we could still archive to S3.
But I'm still pushing, so if I run Cloud Cluster, and I have my data center here, across that network between wherever the Cloud Cluster is running and my data center is non-deduped traffic.
Yeah, but it's cheap to get data into Amazon.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
expensive to get it out. So because you're going from on-prem into Amazon, they're quite happy to suck up your data.
Depending on how much it costs me to to spin up that circuit.
Okay,
Because I've got
yeah.
from a network bandwidth perspective, I still got to set one up. And if I do like direct connect or something like that, it's not cheap.
Yeah, so yeah, address that a bit. I think the use case we have in mind is not so much using the cloud cluster to back up on-premises data,
Yep.
but to have the cloud cluster as either a replication target for your on-premises Rubrik, or
Right.
strictly, or to actually
Back up stuff that is already in the cloud.
In-
Okay,
running some kind of data.
that would make a lot more sense. Okay.
And you probably get, I would think you'd get to a point that once you hit a certain price point, then it might make sense to have a local appliance to do that dedupe locally and then take the dedupe data up. But you'd have to
potentially,
figure out where that
yeah.
inflection point is.
Rubrik's an enterprise price point already, so it's not like this is not something that I'd set up as a test thing. I'm going to already have a substantial investment that I'm making, so I'm not going to kind of kick the tires so much. But I'd take your point. Yeah, probably more. I'd be more likely to come the other way. I think this would be a good thing. I'd be running in cloud if I'm doing my cloud and development up there, and then I could bring another one in house. Go, actually, that's handy there, but I want one over here as well for a different reason.
So you're thinking
I'd see
you
that.
would use something different on-prem and then
I might
leverage-
already have something on-prem, so this would be a good way for me to test that, like use that doing backup of stuff in cloud, which is
Yeah.
test things. That's often what people do with cloud because it's cheap
do
to
it
fail
before,
up
right?
there. I don't have to decommission a whole bunch of gear that I've actually bought. Whereas if I'm committing to doing something on site, I'm more likely to just go, yes, I will buy the appliance and I'll whack it in my
Yeah,
site
but
and then extend to
But
the
that
thing.
bought is not a one-time cost.
The box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the box. Because whether you replace it every 3-4 years, you know, in your storage subsystem underneath
Yeah.
it every 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
there's a renewal cost there. And then the licensing you've got
Yeah.
to add on top of it.
That's right.
So
So if
I'm trying to understand
that's
why
it's
you
a fairly
would-
substantial investment to do that. So I'm already going to make that commitment rather than testing it a bit. I'm Maybe I haven't quite understood.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand the rationale behind why you would keep making that investment on what you already have and maintaining two different systems versus just focusing on
Same
one.
reason I don't decommission my entire data center and go to the cloud tomorrow, because it takes time.
So you think
I can see some customers who would say, I have something which works, maybe it's not brilliant, but it's an insurance policy and it works well enough, but maybe not great. Whereas I could spin this up in the cloud and test it and do some things and then convince other people, look, see, it's awesome, without having to go through the process of getting something on-site, POC, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I mean, for the existing sales motion, it would already be convincing people that yes, it is worthwhile changing from whatever we're doing and keeping this. Another reason you would keep legacy is archival. Depending on where I've put it,
Yeah.
I've got to keep it around
There's a
for legal reasons.
There's a conversion. I mean, we had this with
conversion
tape,
issues, yeah.
right?
Conversion, and it may not be, it's like, what is the value of converting all of the tapes out of an LTO3 library?
Yeah. But then you have to maintain those archaic tape drives, and that's
But they don't
that's a
take
problem.
energy.
Yep. Yeah, they don't take any energy, and if I leave the LTO3s over there, I can pretend that they will work when I go to restore them.
That's
Whereas-
the key.
And you're keeping your 2003 Oxford
I'm still
server alive.
compliant until I try to test it
Yeah.
and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Now I'm not compliant
Yeah.
anymore, and I just created a huge problem for myself.
Yep.
NASA had that problem.
So, but we digress.
Yeah.
So if you need to, you can always do an if config, get your IP information, okay, in terms of your subnet mask gateway. I'm going to go ahead and just Bootstrap. All right, so it's going to ask me my email address, my password that I want it to be. Ooh, I just started typing my Hotmail password. I'm still using Hotmail. Oh no, this is being live streamed. No, all my secrets are out. Here's assuming I can type the same thing twice. What do I want to call the cluster? So we'll just do what we called it in AWS, CFD2 demo. Name server, obviously I'm going to use Google here, all right? Search domains if I need that. NTP, same, okay. Dun, dun, dun. Gateway, I'm going to trust it, but you can always, of course, enter whatever gateway it should be. Same thing with subnet mask, okay? And here's where, again, this is going to have to be 4 minimum. So in this case, I spun up 4 instances. I'm going to go ahead and just enter 4. And then I start entering IP addresses. So this is the fun part. Whoa.
I feel like as the newest member of the tech marketing team, we'll baptize Ken by having him do a song and dance in front of everybody.
Yes.
While
Ken,
Rebecca
please
types IP
entertain
numbers.
us. Entertain us. All right, so then shows me my JSON information. Do I want to proceed in this case? Yes. And then here's where we just get to sit quietly for 15 minutes. Fair? No. So unless you want to. I already pre-deployed a cloud cluster. Okay, so I showed you in AWS a second ago. So in case you don't believe me, we can find it again. Look at node 1 in this case. Whoa, don't rename. We see 18.163. In case you think I'm showing you something on premises. Hey, look at this, 18.163. It is actually running in AWS. So if I go to SLA domains, in my local domains, I'm going to be able to see the pre-configured ones as well as any that I have configured. And I'm going to be able to see, any second now, that we are already protecting some workloads. This is where we get to just blame Wi-Fi, right? It's the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. Remote. Local.
I hate it when you're using it, my excuse.
No.
If you use it, then I don't get to use
That's
it.
what Andrew always gets, he always just it's just the Wi-Fi. I'm like, I don't believe you anymore. All right. It's going to be ready for you, for your demo.
Is he logged in? That's what we get for Chris going.
I know. Dang it, Chris. All right. All right, so while we're doing that, let's go back. PowerPoint. And that way we can go ahead and just keep moving, keep trucking. All right. So that was Cloud Cluster. So we can keep sitting here and waiting for the cluster to bootstrap. Okay, but you're gonna have to just believe me that it takes about 10, 15 minutes. And we can go back and visit it later. But kind of the whole purpose of this demo is, it's not the most exciting one, I'm aware. Okay? That's why I was very excited to be the boring one. All right, so then Andrew gets to be really animated to make up for it. And then we already heard Ken's gonna be doing a song and dance. So I wanted to show you, it's really quick to deploy. It's really simple, okay? It's easy to manage. It's the same interface that you see on premises. It's the same interface you see for Robo, right, or Edge. And it's the same interface that you're gonna be seeing in AWS and Azure, and it's simple to scale. So as I need to, I can just continue to add more and more instances, okay? No problem. They let me do it, so it can't be that hard, right?